Okay, y'all, I'm going to do a video called Ancient Wisdom, the Sacred Alignment and the Constellation of Orion. I wrote some notes down so I could keep on track. It's still a global phenomenon. The Orion constellation is a pattern of stars that is repeated in monuments throughout the ancient world, from Egypt to Mexico. This constellation has been the center of the skies for our ancestors. But why was Orion so important to ancient civilizations? Why are monuments such as pyramids in Egypt mapped in such a way that these constellations mimic the sky? Okay. The whole city of Teotihuacan, or Titicaca, seems to be aligned astronomically. It is consistently oriented 15 to 25 degrees east of true north, and front wall of the pyramid of the sun is exactly perpendicular to the point on the horizon where the sun sets on the equinoxes. The rest of the ceremonial buildings were laid out at right angles to the pyramid of the sun. The Avenue of the Dead points at the setting of Pleiades. Pleiades is another star constellation. Another alignment is the dog star Sirius, sacred to the ancient Egyptian, which has led some to suggest a link between the Great Pyramids of Egypt and Mexico. Orion, more than a constellation, global phenomenon. Okay, well, I'm going to just say this now. At one time, everybody around the world was worshiping the same gods, building the same similar structures, but had no physical contact with each other. And people always ask that question: if they had no physical contact and they had no idea about one another, how did they worship the same gods and build the same structures and pretty much have everything the same except for language and environmental differences? That is because those beings, those gods, the angels, whatever you want to call them, came and taught each civilization, taught them the same things, and they learned from the same beings. That's why you have pyramids in Asia and Peru and Mexico and Egypt. It's all really the same except for environmental differences in language. Here I'm going to talk about the Orion constellation. Orion is clearly visible in the night sky from November to February. Orion is in the southwest sky if you are in the northern hemisphere, and the north and west sky if you are in the southern hemisphere. It is best seen between the latitudes of 85 and 75 degrees. Its right ascension is 5 hours, and its declination is 5 degrees. Alanam, Minataka, and Alataka, which forms Orion's belt, are most prominent stars in Orion. Betelgeuse, the second brightest star in Orion, establishes the right shoulder of the hunter, and Bellatrix serves as Orion's left shoulder. The Orion Nebula, a form of dust, hydrogen, helium, and ionized gases rather than a star, is the middle star in Orion's sword, which hangs off of Orion's belt. The Horsehead Nebula is also nearby. Other stars in the constellation include Hatsaya, which establishes the tip of Orion's sword that hangs off his belt, and Mesa, which forms Orion's head. Sapia serves as Orion's knee, and Regal forms the hunter's left knee. Orion and the constellation Sirius and May and others, a northern constellation lying on the plane of the Milky Way. Its name is the Latinized Hellenic Greek word for swan. One of the most recognized constellations of the North, Summer, and Autumn. It features a prominent asterism known as the North Cross. Have been so important to all these ancient civilizations, and somehow this importance is linked to where we came from and probably where we are going. In 2006, a Hubble Space Telescope captured a never-before-seen image of the Orion Nebula, a massive star formation 1,500 light-years from Earth. The panoramic photo reveals more than 3,000 stars in various stages of life and gives researchers new sight into the formation of celestial objects and planetary systems. And according to modern scientists, it is in mysterious clouds of dust and gas that stars and planets may have been created billions of years ago. Astronomers usually refer to it as M42, and it is where stars are being born. So the Orion constellation is one of the most prominent star formations in the night sky and has been revered by ancient cultures around the globe for thousands of years. Named after the Greek demigod Orion in the 8th century BC, when connected, the stars form the head, shoulders, belt, and feet of a man. According to Greek mythology, Orion was a giant born with superhuman abilities, a mighty hunter who killed animals with unbreaking bronze club. When the Greek hero was eventually slain, he was placed among the stars for eternity. His father was Poseidon. Poseidon is the god of the sea. According to Egyptian mythology, the gods descended from the belt of Orion and Sirius, the brightest star in the sky. The ancient Egyptian civilization firmly believed that from Sirius and Orion, beings came in the form of humans, Osiris and Isis, and instigated the human race. Okay, so according to Egyptian mythology, this is what I believe. This is my belief system. This is my religion, if you want to call it a religion. I call it a way of life. So that's what I believe. Instead of Adam and Eve, I believe it was Osiris and Isis, who were the first human demigods on this planet. Sirius and Orion are critically important because they represent Isis and Osiris, the gods and goddesses from which all of Egyptian civilization and ultimately all of human civilization supposedly sprang. The ancient Egyptians were very clear and we find evidence in writings that Orion was linked with the creation. Orion and Osiris are the same in ancient Egypt, and the Egyptian believed that Osiris will return from Orion one day. Not only in Egypt, we find tales of gods promising to come back, and we can find this practically in every culture in antiquity, which had the knowledge of somebody who would return one day. Just like Christians believe that Jesus Christ will one day come back to earth, to save his people once again. My beliefs is that is Osiris, like I said before. So all of religions and all the ideas and the basis and the foundations came from that first creation story, which was the Isis and Osiris creation story. So they all ultimately came from that story. Sirius and Orion are critically important because they present Isis as Osiris, the god and goddess from which all Egyptian civilization and ultimately the human civilization supposedly sprang. The ancient Egyptians were very clear, okay? And we find evidence in the writings that Orion was linked to the creation. Orion and Osiris are the same, okay? And like I said, in every culture in antiquity, we can find this practically everywhere, that one day this being would return. The concept that the three pyramids at Giza are uniquely aligned with Orion's belt is a fantastic find. Why does the Great Pyramid have air shafts that point to Orion? These are just some of the questions that until today do not have clear answers. If we move 500 miles south of Cairo, we will find a desolate plain in the eastern region of the Saharan Desert. The mysterious archaeological site known as Nabta Playa, discovered by a team of scientists in 1974, researchers believe the stones scattered here were once a part of a vast ritual center for an ancient civilization that derived from 64 to 3400 BC. If nobody knows what BC means, that means before Christ. Just before the rise of the Egyptians. Nabta Playa is different. It wasn't a settlement. One of the centerpieces is a circle that has been called the mini Stonehenge of the desert. For more than 3 decades, this circular stone structure and its alignment to the stars of the Orion constellation have baffled archaeologists. The builders of Nabta Playa seem to be aware of levels of physics and understanding of mathematics that allowed them to build these structures in relation to the Orion constellation. Engineer Robert Berval and an astrophysicist, Thomas Brophy, have studied the configuration of this mysterious monument for more than 10 years. In the book, Black Genesis, they suggest that the stone circle is a star viewing diagram that aligns with the belt stars of Orion at the summer solstice. The calendar cycle is this smaller stone arrangement, and the calendar circle represents a diagram that teaches how the sky moves long term. So what we're looking at right here is a small mock-up of the actual calendar circle of Nabta Playa. According to mainstream scientists, radiocarbon dating indicates the site was constructed nearly 7,000 years ago. Taking this time frame into account, Brophy studied the positioning of the gates and the center stones and discovered it was then in 4900 BC when 3 of the center stones linked up precisely with the 3 brightest stars in the constellation of Orion, okay? I'm going to include pictures of that as well so you guys can see it. Just 35 miles northeast of Mexico City lie the ruins of Titicaca, an ancient city once inhabited by more than 150,000 people. Researchers believe the impressive structure here included 2 large pyramids and a temple which were built in the 2nd century BC, and like the Egyptian pyramids of Giza, these monuments point directly to the 3 stars of Orion's belt. This is not coincidental. There is much evidence, and Orion is clearly an important location in skies to civilization in America and Africa. The layout of the pyramids in Titicaca is the formation of Orion's belt. It's clear as water. They say it is a point of creation, and history tells us that in 3114 BC, the gods came from the heavens to earth in a convention, and this convention occurred in Titicaca, which, like I said, I'm going to include pictures for you guys to see. Construction of Titicaca was attributed to the Quintan Medzene giants. The Quina Medzene, a race of giants who legends say populated the world during the previous era, and whose survivors were hidden in those days, were created during the era of the Son of Rain, and its ruler was Talalak. His rule ended when the Quetzalcoatl made rain fire and burned him to death. Also, what is incredibly interesting is that the pyramids in Titicaca reflect the positions of computer chips. The city layout resembles a computer circuit board with two large processor chips. The Pyramid of the Sun and the Moon are connected by the long, now called Avenue of Death that runs from the north to the south. There is another avenue of equal length that runs from east to west along the avenue. There are a series of open courtyards with small platforms. The courtyards are 475.72 feet, 145 meters wide. There are numerous similarities to the pyramids of Giza in Egypt, using the same mathematics as used in the Giza Plateau. The base of the Great Pyramid and the one of the Sun in Mexico measures 750 square feet. The Pyramid of the Sun is exactly half as tall as the Pyramid of Giza. Another amazing site, which has direct connection to Orion, is located in northeastern Arizona. Here, the Native American Hopi tribe has called these the peaks of Colorado Plateau, home for more than 1,000 years. High above the Arizona desert, their reservation, encompassing more than 1.5 million acres, consists of 12 villages. According to the research, both the Hopi landscape and the tribe's mythology all center around Orion. The Hopi migrated over the southwest, and after a series of building villages and abandoning these villages, they came to these three primary mesas in northern Arizona. They call them first, second, and third mesas. The Hopi mesas shape Orion's belt image, and it is said that the Hopi specifically came here because of the shape. So we know for sure that the Hopi were extremely interested in Orion's belt, and for this was the center of their universe. They say it was a place where they can make contact with the gods, and according to some researchers, not only do the three mesas represent the stars of Orion's belt, but when connected to the other Hopi landmarks throughout the southwest, the collective site maps the entire body of the Orion constellation. Every major star of the constellation corresponds to the ruined site or a village that the Hopi are currently living in. When we take a look at the left shoulder of Orion, we find a place called Wapataki. It's north of Flagstaff, Arizona. The Hopi built this ruin about 1120 AD. Then we find another place called the Homolovi ruin by Winslow, Arizona. This one corresponds to the right shoulder of Orion and the star Betelgeuse. And the Hopi also settled up north of the Mises, and here we find the sites correspond to the star Rigel. So we can find a whole complex of villages that correspond to the right foot of Orion, the star of Sapia. Coincidence? I don't think so. If you look at the Sumerian, the Egyptian, the stories of the Maya, if you look at all these cultures, what you'll see is the same story told in different ways and in different languages, which I stated before. Those